Hi, welcome to a video about SQL batch updates. So in this video, I'm going to show how we can do multiple updates at the same time. So this can be useful because instead of doing a connection each time that we want to do something, and especially if we have many small things we need to add to the database, it can take quite some time to actually send it to the database. So we can kind of save up all our different transactions and then run them all at once. So if we look here, we can see that I did some changes to an earlier program that I made where I have some, I have um, two different things here. I have an account, which is an account in a bank. There's a balance on that account. And I have something called account information, which relates to that because the account information is the address and phone number and also an account ID of the holder of that specific account. So that means that we have a one-to-one connection or a many-to-one connection from account information to account. So it's the foreign key of the account information is the account ID. So for example, if we go here and look into our database here, we can see that right now, if I look into accounts, I can see that I have 10 accounts here and they have ID 1 to ID number 10. So if we go into my program, we can see I have some mock data and I realized just now I made a small mistake. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a list of account information and then I'm creating some accounts here. I can see that I kind of started off here with the wrong one. I used the program online, Muckaroo, to do this. So this data is completely randomized. So it's a really cool tool. I can recommend that. So, but it starts at 1. I forgot that. So the database is already set up so that it will auto increment. If we look in here, we can look at our account here and we can see select top 100. Sorry, not that one. Account info, select top 1000. And there's some problem here with the account info. Okay, let me see for a second. So I had some problems with something IntelliJ. I did command refresh IntelliJ and then things started working. So I'm not sure why I had that error before. Sorry about that. So okay, so now we can see I have like nothing here in my table. There's no IDs, addresses, phone numbers, or account numbers. So what I've done here is I've created a lot of information here, like new account information, phone numbers, and account IDs. So I'm not using the ID because that's auto-generated in here inside of the um, database itself. So that shouldn't be necessary. So let's try to use this. So let's say I want to add all of these new account information into the database, but I don't want to do it one at a time. So let's say I got this from like a big database from somewhere else. Maybe I even read it from a file. Maybe I OCR scanned it or whatever. It comes from somewhere else. And I want it into the system. So I made this get mock data method so that I can get the data. So I'll try saying like this, data equals get mock data, and that will give me the data as a list. So now I got this from somewhere else. And what I want to do, I want to add that to the database. So the first thing, of course, is I need to use a try with resources. So I'll say try connection, con equals, and I then have my my DB connector that I'm using to get the connection. Yeah, and this will throw an exception. So I'll put add catch clauses onto that, and it will just do some print stack trace for now. So that's it for now. So I wanted to do this as a batch. So what I could do is I could go for a loop here, for each loop, and I could say for each account information AI in data. For each account information in data, I want to do this. So I can now do something like a SQL statement. So I can say con like prepare statement, and then I can put the SQL string that I want to prepare. I can put that in here. So that would be something like insert into account information values, and then I want to put the values in here. And the first value I need to put in here is the, let's look at it here, it's the address, and we want to put the phone number and then the account number. So, and of course I also need to put in the different, so it's probably best if I say here that I want the address and, oh, I forgot. I want the address and I want the, so phone number and account number. Phone number and account number. So these are the three different rows that I want to add something to. Let me just put this on a new line to make it easier to read. And then I need to put the values here. So I'll say values, and then let's put that so it's easier to read. Like this. And let's try to put the address here. So the first thing is to put the address here. So I'll just question mark, and question mark, because this is a prepared statement. So I need to save that. So I'm going to say prepared statement pstmt equals the prepared statement here. And then I can say pstmt dot and set. And the first thing I need to set is the address, and that is a string. So I'll say 1. That's the first parameter. That's the first question mark here. And then I'll put in the address. And that is the account information get address. So the next information is pstmt, and then again the phone number is also a string, so I'll put that here, AI get phone number. And the last one is the foreign key, the account number. So I'll say pstmt set int, and I'll say 3, and I'll say AI dot get ID. So this way now I have all of these set. And if I actually did this and then said something like execute update here, that would actually update all of them. I would go in here, I would create a new list, get the list, create a new connection, and for each of these I would then fire off this statement here, and then sorry, I would first set up the statement and then fire off. So this would actually make like 10 requests for the SQL Server. So we do have the same connection that we are retrying, but we're actually doing 10 requests, like one at a time. So there's another way to do that, and that's what this video is about, and that is what we call batch processing. So what we need to do with batch processing is that we need to look at the uh, statement here, and then we need to do it in batch instead. And there's a specific command for that. And first off, what we need to do is we need to set the auto commit. We need to set that to false. So on the connection, we're going to say set auto commit to false, just like what we're doing when we're doing transactions. It's not the same as transactions. We're not protected. We're not doing transactions. We're just doing things one at a time. If we want to do all of these or none of these, then we should do a transaction instead. So batch processing is not the same as doing this. So what we would normally do if this was just this wasn't like a prepared statement, we would use the statement and we would say then add batch, and then we would put the SQL code in here. But because this is actually prepared statements, what we want to do then is that we don't need to set the SQL code because we have to set that before setting the strings. So what I'm going to do instead is just calling the add batch. So add batch will just add whatever prepared statement I set up. It will add that directly to the batches that we want to do. And another thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put this outside of the for loop like this. And this way we can add a lot of data like that. So we set up the prepared statement with the SQL query. We set the different parameters for the prepared statement, the question marks here, and then we don't want, instead of executing the update with 10 requests for the server, we just add them to the batch. And for now, we haven't actually done anything. So what we would want to do then is we want to say pscmt just, and then we want to use the execute batch. And execute batch will actually execute all of the batch statements here. So let me just see if I did it right. So I put the for loop here, execute batch here. That looks about right. So after doing that, then I can actually just commit this to the connection. So I'm going to say con commit. And the reason why I need to do this is because I put auto commit to false up here. So of course I need to do commit here, but it's not doing any transactions here. I haven't set the transaction isolation level to anything yet. So I haven't done any transactions. It's just a way to pile up these different batches here. So let's try to test if it actually works. So what we can do here is we can try to see how much this execute batch will actually tell us how many rows we did. So, and it will do that for each and every one of these. So we'll get something like an array out of this of how many, an int array of how many of these we actually did. And each of these will hold how many updates were done for each one of these. So what we can do is we can do like this, and we can say for each int I in count, then we can say I plus, and then we'll do a colon, and then we'll say I, Let's just do like this. This will print amount of rows. And then we would have something like this where we would say total batches and then count.length like that. That is it. So let's try to do that and see what happens. So I get an error here saying invalid column name phone number. Okay. So phone number, let's just see, maybe I misspelled it. Phono number, yeah, I did in the database. Sorry about that. So let's try again. So then there's some other problem here. It says string or binary data would be truncated, and that is on line 33. So let's see here. What is going on here? So I think the problem is that I probably made the varchar length of the string a bit too small. I think the default, I just set it to default. So if this is more than 30 characters, maybe some of this is more than 30. I don't know, maybe. I tried just making it, I just cut a bit in the video and tried to make it bigger. Let's see if it works now. So here it worked. So I just did some SQL magic here. Also table, I set it to 1,000 characters instead. So what we can see here is that the total batches that we actually did was 10. And for each of them, we updated one row. So we updated 10 rows. If we go into our database, we'll see account information, select top 1000. And we'll see that now we have the different addresses in here. For some reason, the account number got problematic or something. I'm not sure what's going on here. I did some problem in the code here. Let's see. What did I do? Oh, I used the get ID here. So what I should have done, of course, was get the account ID. That's not the point of this video, though. So the idea was just more that it can be quite interesting this way. So what we could also try to do, we could also try to see how slow it would be if we did it with or without batch pod. So I'm just going to create two methods, one that will actually do the batch update, private static, do batch inserts, and another one that will do the slow-mo way. Let's just do the void, and I'll call it do slow-mo inserts. And I'll create two methods for this. I'll take this part and move it into the do batch inserts and also copy it in here to the slow-mo inserts. And I'll remove this set auto commit. I'll remove this total batches. I'll create just pstmt execute update. Remove this commit here. So this is just as simple as it gets. And instead of add batch here, we don't want to do that. And instead we'll put each prepared statement right in here to the for loop and do execute per statement, of course. So these are the two different ways. The next thing I want to try to do, you see it's the same thing. One of them uses batches, the other one doesn't. So what I want to see is how fast can I do this? So what I will do is I'll just run because because I'm not using any IDs or anything, and I didn't put any constraints on this, I can just do this any amount of time that I want. So what I'll try to do is I'll try to run them some more than once and then see how much time does it actually take. So I'll do a couple of loops here, and not to interfere, I would need to just remove these lines here because it takes a lot of time printing them to the screen. So I'll remove that, otherwise it wouldn't be fair to this one, and nothing here actually prints. So we'll go in here and I'll make a for loop, and let's say I want to do this. Let's just start with 100 times, and there's already 10, so it would be 1,000 times really. And then we'll say do slow-mo inserts, and then we'll do another for loop, and we'll also do that 100 times, and we'll say do batch inserts. And then let's try to time this. So let's just say int test amount and set that to 100, so I'm certain that this number here will always be the same. Okay. And the next thing I want to do is I want to time this. So we can do system and current time in milliseconds. So we'll say long start equals system current time in milliseconds. So that is our current time. And then after the slow-mo inserts, we'll say system out print line, time for slow-mo, and we'll say plus, and then we'll say start, system current time in milliseconds minus start. And we'll need to put this in parentheses, otherwise it will do string concatenation and everything will be, oh, it can't with minus. Okay, we won't have a problem. So this should give us how many milliseconds this actually takes. So what we'll do then is I think we'll say start slow-mo here, and then I'll say slow-mo here. So the next thing we'll do, we'll also start the batch insert here, start batch, and we'll do a print whenever that is done. We'll do that down here, time for batch, batch, and we'll say start time of the batch here, and this way we'll see how much time it takes. So let's start with 1 and just see how that pans out. So remember, it will still do 10 updates. So we can see that for the slow-mo, it already almost takes a second, and this takes quarter of a second. So does that scale? So let's set it to a multiply of 10. So this would take like 7 seconds, and this should take around 3 seconds. Let's see, or maybe 8. I think it should be a bit faster, and the batch processing should be a lot faster. So 3 seconds for slow-mo and 1.7 seconds for the batch. Let's go for 100 and see what happens then. So this obviously will take a minute or something like that. I won't skip time because I want you to see how slow it's going to be. Maybe if it takes a lot of time I will, but I think it should be doable. Should have some music playing in the background, some elevator music. So 25.9 seconds for the slow-mo version, and let's see for the other one. Does take some time too, but let's see if it's not faster. So there is quite a difference here. It's almost a factor two in difference for this. So whenever you have a lot of different updates or something like that you want to do, it's a very good idea to actually put them into these batch transactions here. So yeah. So I just realized one thing, which I feel pretty stupid right now that I didn't see. But of course, I'm also running the batch execution 100 times. So let me just fix that. I'll just skip ahead in time, recode the thing, and then let's test it in a better way. Ta-da! So now I did some changes. So what I'm going to do is um, I'm going to change it. So I put the for loops into the do slow-mo, and I put the other for loop also into the do batch inserts. And here I can just set how many I want to do. So I do the test amount here and the test amount here, and that should go better. So what I actually saw was that when I'm doing like 100 tests, I'm also doing 100 database connection, which is really stupid because that takes a lot of time. So I was actually worried about the time, but it does seem there is some difference, but the get connection thing will take up everything. So what I did, I just put the loop around the internal for loop here, and I also put the loop around the internal for loop here. So what I'm actually doing, I'm repeating only this for loop within the connection 10 times. That would be only be fair. And up here, I'm doing the for loop within the connection here and just waiting until execution until the very last here. So let's see if that's any faster. It should be a lot faster. So we're still doing 100 here. So let's see if it's faster. And maybe for the non-batch inserts, the slow-mo one. So now you can see the slow-mo one takes 16 seconds and the batch one takes 281 milliseconds. That's more likely. So I forgot about that when I was doing it. I was a bit shocked that the difference wasn't any bigger. So you really have something. So the next thing, let's go to 1,000 here, and I'll just cut time. So I'll start running, and then I'll cut the time until I have the result, so you don't have to wait on that. So that's it. It actually ended at 160 seconds. So as a not to my surprise, it actually scales linearly for the slow-mo version, and you see that although it actually went up with a factor of 10, it only went up from 200 to 600 milliseconds or something, or like 300 to 700 milliseconds. So the scaling is much better. So if you're having individual data like this that you have to put in, batching things are a lot better for doing that. So I would definitely recommend doing that. Yeah, so another thing I talked about was, of course, the transactions. So what is the difference between transactions and batches? So batches is just if you have some unrelated queries that you want to do in one big sweep, then you can just do it like that. So the problem is, of course, here now we are doing 1,000 times 10. So that's 10,000 inserts into our database here. Let's say it was 1,000,000 that we were doing. And if we were to batch them all, we would kind of queue them up here in the client pod and and wait and wait and wait and wait. And then at some point, if we lost connection or system crashed or anything, we would have to start completely over. That would be the same if we did this as one big transaction. So in some cases, it might be better to do them one at a time, or maybe we could create something like, let's say it was like 10 million of these. Maybe we could do them in batches of 1,000. So each time that we reach 1,000 that we haven't kind of committed to the database yet, we would execute the batch and commit that on the connection. So we can do it in multiple batches. We can do anything like that, and we could maybe even combine the two. So combine transactions with the batches and something like that. So, but normally we have the batches only for doing many for these speed purposes here. So my next video, I'll be just looking into the last thing, that is transaction rollbacks, because in my examples I did earlier, I didn't talk a lot about rollbacks and what rollbacks can do. So this is the topic for my last video. So that's it for batches. Bye.